National parks in Patagonia are some of the most beautiful in the world. They are also some of the most pristine, wildest and remote. These last frontiers of southern South America protect some of the most unique, rarest and endangered wildlife and some of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. One of these is the Los Glaciers National Park, which is on the border with Chile and along the spine of the mighty Andes Mountains, and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here, massive Patagonia glaciers spill down towering mountains and carve into icy cold glacial lakes with thunderous cracking. Patagonia is divided into two clearly distinct regions. On one hand, there is Patagonia of the Andes, a region of lakes, forests and glaciers, where the necessity of conserving the environment and the existing rich natural resources brought about the creation of the first national parks in South America. On the other hand, there is Atlantic Patagonia, which extends along 2,200 kilometers of virgin coastland and whose principal features is in the Valdez Peninsula. Between the two is the loneliness of the Patagonian tablelands, a uniquely harsh territory with fierce winds and an inhospitable climate where rheas and guanacos roam free and where huge flocks of sheep are bred at ranches as large as a European province. Los Glaciares National Park, created in 1937, occupies 600,000 hectares. Its objective is to preserve the astonishing biosphere of an exceptional natural beauty formed by large highland lakes reflecting mountain peaks and imposing glaciers. The lakes stand out in the Park Viedma and Argentino. The second of them extends towards the west in two north and south denominated arms, where several glaciers finish, among them the Uppsala and the Burrito Mourinho. The arms present display characters of fjords, tunnels and bays. In 1981, the park was declared Natural Patrimony of the Humanity by UNESCO, with the objective to preserve for the future generations the testimony of the Quaternary period. The most important vegetation of the region corresponds to the Magellanico forest that surrounds the mountainous zone by glaciers, where the langurs and the notres adorns their branches in spring. The rest of the territory is surrounded by steppe. Between its fauna, it larger species on the way to extinction. Covering more than 2,000 square miles, more than 350 stunning Patagonia glaciers are located in famous Los Glaciers National Park. Los Glaciers National Park offers the wonderful chance to see some of the most impressive forces of nature. Glacial activity is concentrated around two main lakes, Argentino and Viedma. Lake Argentino is particularly spectacular, with 3 glaciers dumping their effluvia into its milky glacial waters. Massive blue icebergs are launched into the lake with a thunderous splash. Los Glaciers contains some of the few glaciers in the world that are actually advancing. Lago Argentino is the largest lake in Patagonia, covering 1,466 square kilometers surface and could be up to 500 meters deep at some points. It is one of the most beautiful excursions down the region to be performed by water departing from Punta Bandera, 50 kilometers away from El Calafate. Boat excursions on the Lago Argentino usually stop at the Bar Onelli, where visitors may disembark. an 800-meter pathway through the Lenga and cypresses forest, ending on the shores of the bay surrounded by mountains where from one may watch the Onelli, Agassiz and Bolado glaciers. The name Los Glaciares refers to the glaciers that are born on the ice caps, the largest continental ice extension after Antarctica, which occupies almost half of its area. Also known as Patagonic continental ice, creates 47 big glaciers, 13 of which flow to the Atlantic. There are also more than 200 smaller glaciers unconnected to the ice caps. High season is during summer. This area presents weather variations, but it can be said that it will be more humid near the mountains and colder in the higher lands. 21st of December is the longest day of the year, when sunlight lasts 17 hours. Each episode of Glacial Advance and Retreat also shuffles the mix of flora and fauna. Fragile vegetation ventures into a seemingly barren wasteland. Carried by the wind, seeds and spores of pioneering plants cling tenaciously to life in the hostile environment. Approximately 260,000 hectares are covered with ice and therefore with no vegetation, and about 95,000 hectares of lakes. The woods cover about 79,000 hectares, and the predominant species are Lenga and Guindo. The flora of Los Glaciers National Park belongs to the Magellan District, the most southern one. In between the upper Andean vegetation and the lakes, the most important species are Nothofagus. The wood's upper boundary lies between 1,000 to 1,100 meters. Upon 500 meters, the woods tend to get poorer and the trees are thinner and shorter. The Sorco and Canelo disappear as many species of the underwood, and the Lenga starts to show. The Guindo can be found up to 850-900 meters over sea level, at this height reduced to a bush, while the Lenga continues up to 1,000 meters. The herb stratum has lichens, ferns, mosses and flowers like topper and orchids. The arvigillas, blue-flowered, grow very close to the glaciers as carpets, and the Pinguicula antarctica with purple flowers are carnivorous plants which digest insects to get nitrogen substances needed for the nutrition. The steppe presents a high adaptation to very dry conditions and the defense against cold and wind. The gramineas grow in low and compact tufts with folded leaves rigid and covered with thick cotton, which diminishes evaporation. They are often seen round bushes like ninio or also half-moon-shaped bushes. Starts over 1,100 meters high, up to 1,500 to 1,600 meters in the highland semi-desert. This kind of vegetation presents very short coverage and mostly grass cushions, frequently of Azorella and Bolex species. In humid areas, the vegetation is dense. The approach to the Uppsala Glacier is sailing through the north branch of Lago Argentino. It's surrounded by Lenga woods and green valleys. During this sail, icebergs falling off the front wall float on the lake, giving a great view. Traveling to Uppsala Glacier is like traveling to another land. It is South America's biggest and most beautiful glacier and the most arresting of all geographical points in the country. Near El Calafate, astounding Uppsala Glacier is situated in the northern section of Lago Argentino in Los Glaciers National Park. At 10 kilometers in width and more than 50 kilometers long, Uppsala is the most visited of all glaciers in Patagonia aside from the Spaghettini and Burrito Mourinho Glacier. The undeniable beauty of crystallized blue ice, combined with the overwhelming natural beauty of the area's mountainous backdrop, creates a vision unlike any other. During the past 100,000 years, as Homo sapiens was evolving into his fully modern form, glaciers periodically advanced to cover much of Eurasia and North America. The so-called periglacial environment is widely thought to have provided one of the environmental challenges which led to advances in tools, social behavior, language, and the other qualities which make a modern human. Glaciation is therefore important to man not only for its geological effects, but also for its social effects. Glaciers, perennial accumulations of ice, snow, sediment, rock and water, respond to changes in temperature, snowfall and geologic forces. Several components make up a glacial system. The ice and sediment contained in the glacier, the valleys, fjords and rock features it flows over, on or around, and the deposits left by its retreat or advance. New snow layers create pressure on existing layers of snow and ice. This process, firnification, changes snow to firn, a dense granular snow. After the first season's melt, snow becomes firn. As it is compressed further, firn becomes ice. As the snow collects over many years, an ice field forms. Ice flows down the valleys and slopes of the mountains to the lower elevations, and glaciers are born. Glaciers form where more snow falls than melts. A glacier's accumulation area located at the higher elevations accrues a wealth of snow and ice. The ablation area located at lower elevations loses ice through melting or calving. A glacier's terminus or phase advances when more snow and ice amass than melt, and it retreats when melt exceeds accumulation. When melt equals accumulation, a glacier achieves equilibrium and its phase remains stationary. Whether the glacier's phase is advancing or retreating, glacial ice persistently glides down valley. Coerced by gravity, ice pursues the path of least resistance. Ice depth and bedrock angle influence the rate of glacial flow. Glaciers contain two zones of ice flow. The zone of plastic flow, ice closest to the bedrock, experiences extreme pressure from the weight of the ice above and conforms to the anomalies in the bedrock. The zone of brittle flow, the upper 150 feet of glacial ice, lacks this pressure and reacts inelastically to the bedrock features, forming elongated cracks called crevices, which fluctuate with the glacier's flow. Glaciers leave an impressive footprint on the landscape, carving the rock as they retreat and leaving behind steep topography and fjords where the ice once held sway. Flooded sea coasts and rising water levels are the legacy of the retreats, as they are the ecological changes on the landscapes around the glacier's edge. Year after year, snow accumulates and compacts underlying snow layers from previous years into solid ice, causing changes in volume, density, and crystal structure. Glacial ice appears blue because it absorbs all colors of the visible light spectrum except blue. Glacial ice may also appear white because some ice is highly fractured with air pockets and indiscriminately scatters the visible light spectrum. Rocks and other debris picked up by the glacier add a brown tint to the picture. The Argentine National Park Administration oversees 34 protected areas, including national parks, natural monuments, and education reserves. A trip to Burrito Mourinho Glacier is one of the most unforgettable excursions and wonderful experiences in all of Patagonia. Tours to Burrito Mourinho Glacier begin by fringing the Bahia Redonda on Lake Argentino, cruising past beautiful Isla Solitaire. A succession of catwalks, balconies and belvederes allow excellent close-up views of the front wall of the glacier from different perspectives and heights. On the southern area of the park, the most famous glacier can be seen, Burrito Mourinho. It is very famous because of its dynamic changes, which produces cyclic phenomenon on forward and backward movement, with spectacular ice falls from its front walls. An ice cloak or glacial cap covers this protected area of 600,000 hectares. Among the 356 glaciers, the Burrito Mourinho is the most outstanding one, having a front of 5 kilometers long and a height of over 60 meters above the level of the water. A large series of walkways and platforms or balconies along the glacier's face. Known worldwide because of its process of fractures, the front of the glacier closes the running of the water of Brazo Rico when it approaches the coast. This produces a kind of pond where the water goes up 20 meters over the level, creating the filtration that ends up in the fracture. Lake Argentino, in which Burrito Mourinho Glacier is set, has many branches. Two of them, Cerro and Rico, are behind the Magellan's Peninsula and they debouch in the lake through the Tempenos Channel. And from time to time, the glacier's front ice tongue moves forward and joins the peninsula, even climbing its coasts. This amazing natural dam makes the level of the Cerro and Rico branches, which still keep getting water, ice and snow, raise their level, causing a huge amount of pressure. This pressure eases when the water starts filtering through the places where the glacier touches ground, and it digs a sort of tunnel underneath the ice. Finally, when this hole gets too big and due to the water pressure, the enormous wall of ice falls apart, causing one of the most overwhelming natural phenomenon that can be seen. The effects of retreating and advancing glaciers can be clearly seen. The advancing Mourinho Glacier in the park often advances so far that its snout cuts off the normal escape stream of Lake Rico, forming a natural dam which inundates vast areas. When the glacier retreats in the heat of summer, a wall of water roars down the valley. Thousands of years ago, glaciers covered a big part of the national park. These ice rivers eroded and gave shape to the landscape, excavating in the mountains' large valleys. At the same time, these ice rivers were fragmenting and dragging lots of rocks, which had been accumulated in the front and the sides of the glacier, making small hills called moraines. In a later climate change, which included a temperature increase, caused the reduction of the surface occupied by ice. Large milky water lakes occupied the bottom of the valleys, and lush forests covered their slopes. The ice countryside occupied an approximate surface of 2,600 square kilometers. From there, 47 bigger glaciers descend. Impressive blocks of ice detach permanently with a thunderous roar. There are no scientific estimates on the next break, and it is not possible to know how many times you can enjoy this wonder, since the Burrito Mourinho and other glaciers are suffering the consequences of global warming. Glacial ice only looks blue when it has become very dense. Years of compression slowly increase the density of the ice, from loose and fluffy snow to extremely dense ice. As it is compressed, the air trapped between the original snowflakes is forced out. When glacier ice becomes extremely dense, the properties of the ice change. It now absorbs all the colors in the spectrum except blue, which it reflects. This is why it looks blue. From this, one have probably worked out that it is trapped air in snow that makes it reflect almost all the spectrum and appear white. So white ice is new ice, blue ice is old ice. From the surface, snow and ice present a uniformly white face. This is because almost all of the visible light striking the snow or ice surface is reflected back, without any preference for a single color within the visible spectrum. The balconies gave the chance to see the face up close, to listen to the cracks and groans of the glacier, and to wait, with hundreds of others, for an anticipated fall of a new iceberg from the face. The navigation culminates with a visit to the Spaghettini Glacier, one of the most beautiful glaciers abruptly descending between the sheer rocky mountain slopes. Several icy peaks above were partly bare rock with the deep wavy grooves carved by the scouring ice. Visitor moved to the bow as the boat neared the Spaghettini Glacier, a steep dramatic ice cape that curves down the mountainside and ends in the lake. Spaghettini Glacier covers an area of 66 square kilometers and is 1.5 kilometers wide. On the bank of the Spaghettini Canal stands an astonishingly dense vegetation. This is one of the wettest areas of the national park, where you will see the Heim South and Seco glaciers in the middle of the woods. The differences that vegetation show around the glacier caused for its advance, the action of the wind and the sun are very attractive too. The Las Glaciares National Park is an area of exceptional natural beauty, with rugged, towering mountains and numerous glacial lakes, including Lake Argentino, which is 160 kilometers long. At its farthest end, 3 glaciers meet to dump their effluvia into the milky grey glacial water, launching massive igloo icebergs into the lake with thunderous splashes. Las Glaciares National Park Tour encompasses one of the most scenically impressive national parks in South America. By its magnificent natural beauty, it constitutes a wonder in the world and was declared World Heritage by UNESCO in 1981.